When I was about 10 years old, living in Scotland, I asked my mother where I was from. She certainly looked puzzled because she had every right to believe I knew where I was from. But she said, "You're Scottish." And I became very indignant and I said, "No, I'm not. I'm a citizen of the world." Now, I don't know what I thought I meant by that. I don't even know why I became so agitated and animated that day. But looking back on it, it does seem somewhat prophetic that I was indignantly proclaiming myself as citizen of the world, because today I have probably close to 6 million air miles, and I've certainly traveled to many different countries, mostly on speaking engagements and work, sometimes on vacation. But it did make me think about the issue of social identity. Who do we identify with? And as I've said in previous videos, there are three immutable forces: dominance, unconscious bias, and the third one is degrees of difference. And a part of degrees of difference, and what I mean by that, it's like what I think of as the geometry of inclusion, the complexity of the Rubik cube, if you like, is that we all have multiple social identities. I am a white woman who's originally from Scotland, who's heterosexual and raised in a Christian environment. And today I'm a baby boomer. So all of these social identities I can relate to. I don't feel particularly strongly about any of them. I don't deny any of them. But social identity can also come across to people as labeling. I'm air quotes. And when we're in workshops, quite often when we're talking about social identity or what groups do you identify with, sometimes we get people saying, "I don't like labels. I don't want to be identified in that way. I'm an individual. Don't treat me as if I'm just a member of a group." But the reality is, you may not think of yourself as a member of that group, but I promise you, other people do. So that what people see is what they unconsciously and consciously will categorize and put you in a box. So the minute people hear my accent, for example, they immediately say, "Where are you from?" or "I love your accent." My accent got promoted when I moved from the United Kingdom to the US, because when you live in Scotland, you're not considered to speak the Queen's English. But when you move to another country, people like your accent. So our social identity does matter to us. It matters how we present ourselves, and it matters how other people see us, because they're also having thoughts, judgments, and assumptions about you based on who they think they see and who they believe you are. And that's all part of what I call the geometry of inclusion, or the complexity of difference, the degrees of difference. You can't just look at me and say, "Well, she's a woman, she's an older woman, she's an overweight woman," whatever it is your mental model is, because there's so much more to me as an individual. But there's also so much more to me based on the stories and the experience I have to tell based on each of these social identity groups. So social identity matters, and the issue of labeling is a challenge, but nevertheless it's a reality. And if we're going to have an inclusive work environment, we need to be interested in people's stories, but not just their individual stories. We need to be curious and willing to lean in and learn about the complexity of their group stories. And we also need to recognize that each one of us is seamlessly moving in and out of each of these experiences throughout the day. So social identity is indeed part of our reality. And we'll talk more about that, and also about the four permeable forces that I believe impact the illusion of inclusion in future videos.